Yeah, weak and humiliated, the Iranian regime will have a hard time keeping its grip on power is perhaps not the best assessment here, especially considering that Israel has more than 600 Iranians. Okay? So, if anything, the weakest moment for the Islamic Republic is when there is Iran is the most nerd country out there.
Protests
One of the biggest nerd countries of all time. They're all stem cells over there, dude.
have taken place
A lot of their women, too, specifically.
in Tehran, despite mass evacuations there. The BBC isn't allowed to broadcast from inside.
Well, who the fuck said they are illiterate? The women of The View, actually. And also, the average American unironically thinks every country in this region is all like riding camels, living in huts, and are like the most uneducated, illiterate population. Ironically enough, not that they live in huts or whatever, but if you look at like the West Bank, it's actually the Israeli settlers that live in trailer parks and unironically don't know how to read. What they think it resembles Iran is closer to the ultra-nationalist rabid settler base of support that is the only growing demographic in Israel. Yeah, the women can't even leave the house, shit like that. I don't know if this person is saying that unironically, but I hope they're not. This doesn't mean that the regime is not oppressive and doesn't do like crazy shit from time to time. They certainly do. I know much has been made about Iranian women can't dance. I laughed at that notion. They did prosecute some people. It was ridiculous. No, that's a quote from The View. Yeah. But to say that like Iranian society broadly is like uneducated or the women of Iran are not allowed to dance is insane. It's like saying they literally force every woman in the United States of America to become a baby incubator because of what they did in Georgia.
Iran, but we have this report from Siarvash Ardalan of the BBC Persian service in London.
In the center of the crowd, Iran's president, surrounded by hundreds of party faithful, venting their fury at the United States. What America did is truly unforgivable, says this woman. Iran is stronger than they perceive. But after last night's US attacks, the regime here is seriously weakened. So what comes next? The Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei could swallow his pride and possibly save his regime and the country from further damage. Or he could fight on and risk everything. Domestic public opinion is now divided and confused.
The response must be firm and decisive. What's at stake here is the very identity of being Iranian.
In my opinion, Iran needs to engage in some reflection and contemplation.
As for the country's Revolutionary Guard, it responded by saying U.S. military bases in the region are vulnerable.
Dude, BBC, CNN, and the New York Times play a more dangerous role in manufacturing consent than even Fox News and like GBN or whatever the right-wing version, the Fox News equivalent is. Like, because your expectation for Fox News is like uninterrupted propaganda. But your expectation from legacy publishers such as the BBC, like the most important state broadcaster, perhaps in the entirety of the Western world, or the Gray Lady, the paper of record for the United States of America, the New York Times, is that they are supposed to be giving you the unvarnished, unbiased truth. So when those outlets are using that tremendous responsibility to do uninterrupted state propaganda, I feel like that does a lot more damage to otherwise intelligent people and causes them to develop the wrong opinions because they're basing it off of the wrong assessments. It's kind of shocking how much they do the shit. Yeah, Anthony Zurcher is a BBC News employee. This is beyond disgusting, and they want us to believe that they are impartial. Somewhere in heaven, posts Eli Lake talking about John McCain, who always fantasized about Iran. Anthony Zurcher, BBC employee, goes bomb, bomb, bomb Iran. Famously, that was what That was what John McCain actually sung. In any case, this is why you come here to the Piker Broadcasting Service for the actual biased, but at least honestly biased, unvarnished truth. The difference between me and all these other places is that I will tell you exactly where my biases are. I think everyone is biased, and I think it's important for people to recognize what their perspective truly is instead of making it seem as though they are approaching the subject matter from this objective analysis. You can still make objective analysis. I often do. There are plenty of things that I don't agree with that other countries do, even countries that I actually am more sympathetic to than others. And I will still tell you exactly what they're doing when they're doing something wrong. The Piker Broadcasting Service is sponsored by you, the viewers, for $6 a month in the form of a Twitch subscription or a free one in the form of a Twitch Prime. Twitch Prime is free as long as you connect your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account. The Piker Broadcasting Service is sponsored by you and is always for you, the viewers. Thank you. Hasan, do you know anyone in Turkey that can help get a train ticket from Tehran to Van or anywhere? My dad is stuck and can't get back out to England. I do not. I'm sorry. Yeah, here's John McCain singing.
It's well documented that we have, for quite a long time now, known where the real problem is in the Middle East. And in fact, the president adequately described it as the axis of evil. I guess my question is, how many times do we have to prove that these people are blowing up people now? Never mind if they get a nuclear weapon. When do we send them an airmail message to Tehran? That old Beach Boys song, Moran?
But they know retaliation would invite further U.S. attacks. This is a state TV reporter who went to Fordo. I can't see much damage, he says. For now, it's America's word against Iran's. Weakened and humiliated, the Iranian regime will struggle to maintain its credibility and grip on power in the face of widespread discontent.
Yeah, weak and humiliated, the Iranian regime will have a hard time keeping its grip on power is perhaps not the best assessment here, especially considering that Israel has more than 600 Iranians. Okay? So, if anything, the weakest moment for the Islamic Republic is when there is real popular uprising due to real social struggles that they experience due to the repressive forces within the Iranian government that see any sort of civil liberties as simply Western NGO-backed foreign intervention and try to stamp it out through force by opposition members, by jailing people, by torturing them. That is unironically the weakest point for Iran, the Iranian regime, the Iranian government. Okay? This is not one of those moments. And the reason why this is not one of those moments is because why is it that their weakest moment is when there's popular struggle happening in the country? It's because they're people, right? It's because they're jailing people. They're people. So when a foreign power, especially a Western-backed foreign power, comes in and blows up the country, and a shit ton of poets, artists, artisans, bakers, things of that nature, I think that is a opportunity for the Islamic Republic to say, no, we are a sovereign state and we will protect you unconditionally from Western intervention. The Mahsa Amini protests were probably the weakest they've been in some time, but it's still not the point of overthrow. But yeah, no, it's still not at the point of overthrow. Exactly. You mean U.S. aid was more effective in upheaval? If you think that the entire resentment against the Islamic Republic is simply backed by, or not backed by, but simply propped up by U.S. aid or completely cultivated by U.S. aid and foreign propaganda, you're delusional. There is real resentment. The American government does not have the power of hypnosis, okay? The CIA can only take advantage of the national security weaknesses born in a lot of these countries, the real popular resentment that exists in a lot of these countries. They can egg it on, they can offer it support, they can take advantage of that destabilization, but they can't just single-handedly cultivate it, especially not anymore. Okay? In the age of the internet, it is infinitely harder to do this. A lot of people, I think, overestimate the power that the CIA has. So while I will not discount the idea that like Mahsa Amini protests were certainly also propped up or taken advantage of by Western interests and Israeli intervention, American intervention. There is certainly truth to that. It's the same with the Hong Kong protests. Okay? Hong Kong protests were real. Of course, people did not want to exist under the Chinese, the Communist Party of China and their repressive policies. They were scared of this. Okay? There was very real reason for a lot of people to feel resentful. There was a very real reason for a lot of people to feel frustrated and scared. Does that mean that the CIA did not do everything in its power to beef up the protests? Of course they did. This is how it's been all around the world, okay? If you don't believe that the popular discontent that exists against the Democratic administration is propped up by China and Russia, or the popular discontent and mobilization that exists in this country against Donald Trump right now that is propped up by Iran or Russia or China, then you should be able to understand why people can feel resentful towards other sovereign powers, okay? And their own personal involvement and relationship with the state. Don't be stupid. This is like applauding a grown man for being able to wipe their behind. Not exactly a vote of confidence. Great take from AOC. Banger. This reminds me of when the conservative media lifted up Ahmed Shalabi to run Iraq after the U.S. invasion. Then he won only 0.5% of the vote in the election and was very likely an agent of ... Iran. Today, His Royal Highness Reza Pahlavi, exiled crown prince of Iran, joins me on the latest developments of the Israel-Iran conflict. Yeah, this guy does not have motion, okay? Sure, I'm certain there's some royalists, okay? But he'd have an easier time becoming the mayor of Los Angeles, okay, than the leader of Iran. Oh no. God forbid that actually wants real political power. He could win the mayoral position of this great city in a heartbeat, okay? This is where his base is, not over there. Anyway, the Israeli military says it launched a wave of airstrikes deep into Iran early Sunday, using over 20 warplanes and more than 30 munitions in an intelligence-based operation. For the record, it didn't take much. Remember when yesterday someone tried to tell me that Israel was going to halt their strikes, and I told you they're not. That means that they're going to definitely continue striking Iran. Well, here it is. A surface-to-air missile launcher near Tehran was also targeted, according to Israel. The Israeli military said the goal is to achieve aerial superiority over Iranian airspace and degrade Iran's military capabilities. Okay, but I thought that they already had achieved aerial superiority over Iranian airspace. What is happening? I thought they had complete aerial dominance. Huh.
Siadash Ardalan, BBC News.
We can speak now to Bahman Kalabasi.
Pahlavi is our only option and we will support it. Who's we? You ain't speaking Farsi. Are you speaking French when you say we? Who's we? I am Persian, not Iranian. We want Pahlavi. We want him. We love Israel. We love Israel. It is okay. Please, Tehran, Israel. I want to wear bikini to the beach. I want to wear bikini to the beach. Israel. I'm Israel High.
Correspondent for BBC Persian who's joining us. Bahman, very good to see you. We don't have a great picture of the general mood right now inside Iran, but what can you tell us? We mentioned there were some protests in Tehran, but also, as we saw in that report, support for the government in the face of what they see as U.S. aggression.
There's definite mass discontent with this regime, and the immediate need that talking to people is very obvious is for this strike and counter-strike cycles to end. The Israelis stop attacking Iran and Iran stop retaliating. That is the first thing that...
How did you know I am from Iran?
Much of the public is hoping would happen as soon as possible. There has been many civilian casualties, the infrastructure is being hit, and the lives of millions of people have been disrupted. It's one thing to hear, than drones on TV, but it's another thing to live under them day in and day out and hear those voices and be worried that your area, your neighborhood could be next. So that is the reality in the short term. But in the medium term and the long term, I think a lot of Iranians would want this to end permanently, which means they do not retaliate at all. Of course, there are hardliners who support the regime, and there is some rallying around the flag effect of this.
Yeah, there's some hardliners that support the regime. That's it. Otherwise, maybe a little bit of rallying around the flag, just a little bit. Not most people are saying most people are screaming, please, Israel, keep bombing us. Keep bombing us more, please.
As well. But the majority remains hopeful that the regime calculates that this will be too costly if they attack American interests in the region.
Right.
So that is where the population stands on a large scale, and that is hoping that the war would end and that there is no further escalation by the regime. But that still takes us where it was before these attacks started, which was...
No, most people are hopeful that the Iranian government, regardless of its repressive forces, will protect the Iranian citizens, okay? That's what anyone wants. It doesn't matter what their political perspective is. The moment that there is an external force that is, especially a Western force, that is destabilizing the country, bombing the country, that's a moment where virtually every aspect of civilized society is going to go, please save us, please defend us, please protect us. That's it. That's the entire purpose of a government to begin with. And the moment that the government is seen as incapable of defending the citizens is the moment where the government will be destabilized, which is precisely the point of America and Israel right now. Through a war of attrition, they are trying to manage this conflict in a way where they can hopefully make the Islamic Republic look weaker so that there is popular mobilization against the government from the population that'll go, okay, what the fuck are you doing? You're not protecting us. No one, on the other hand, is demanding that the government just cast them aside and let Israel and America run the show. I mean, there are some people, but again, there are insane people everywhere. You know what I mean?
Heavily sanctioned economy in the worst shape it's been since maybe the beginning of this regime. And
like, I'll give you a good example from one that Westerners understand because they were primed and focused and lasered in on, okay? Ukraine. The further east you go in Ukraine in the past, the more Russian sympathies existed. This is not Russian propaganda. I'm just judging this off of Western polls that were always conducted in these areas, okay? People who consider themselves to be ethnic Russians, people that had more family members in Russia, and vice versa, okay? The further east you went in Ukraine, the more sympathies for Russia existed. All of that is gone after Russia invaded Ukraine and blew up half of eastern Ukraine. It's that simple. The people that would have despised their own government, the people that would have, the Ukrainian population that fought against ultra-nationalist paramilitary forces like Azov Battalion, which was formed initially from neo-Nazi football hooligans, the anti-Nazis, the people who fought against those Nazis, the Ukrainians that fought against those Nazis, now found themselves side by side fighting alongside the Nazis against a much more damaging force, a foreign power that was engaging in irredentist action. Sure, gone, especially in Crimea, lol. No, Crimea is different. And the reason why Crimea is different is because of how Russia took Crimea. Crimea is virtually paperwork in comparison to what has taken place in eastern Ukraine. Look at eastern Ukraine versus look at how Russia annexed Crimea. Okay? Was it still inappropriate? Absolutely. Okay? Was it still violating the sovereignty of Ukraine? Certainly. But you can't make this comparison between Crimea and eastern Ukraine when look at the conflict in eastern Ukraine. Look at the conflict in Ukraine in general versus look at what happened in Crimea. They didn't bomb the shit out of Crimea. Your takes are terrible. You don't even care about the poor Israelis who are forced to commit genocides. I know. It's really fucked up how Israel's hand was forced.
There's no light at the end of the tunnel without some sort of a negotiated settlement that opens up.
There's a Russophile author couple from Ukraine that wrote about the Turkish caliphate that would capture Crimea and kickstart the process. Their house got bombed during the invasion and they quit the internet and all their family speaks Ukrainian now. Yeah, no shit. Of course. Like, Crimea was already Russified under the USSR to begin with, so it's a little bit different. But then again, it doesn't even matter, because if Russia had done the same shit that they did in eastern Ukraine to Crimea, I'm certain that the Crimean population would also develop specific and tremendous resentment towards Russian annexation as well. The Russification of Crimea took place before Ukraine became an independent nation state.
Iran's economy that lifts the sanctions, and
Right.
that feels far away right now.
So what options do you think does that leave for the Iranian regime? And, can we learn anything from how it responded to the assassination of Qasem Soleimani during Donald Trump's first term?
Not many good options. Okay. If they are one to finally make a U-turn and accept that their policies have brought Iran to this point, even though they find it unfair, and that even though they actually are worried about the consequences, the reality is they don't actually have very good options. If they decide to come out and say that we want to negotiate, then they have given up all that they have invested in billions of dollars. And
it's simply that. It's just we're anyway. China says U.S. attack on Iran seriously violates international law. Here we have it, folks. As I told you, we have it right in front of us, okay? The most significant of talking points, the sternest of all. I'm telling you, China will show you what kind of strong condemnations they actually are capable of if Iran actually mines the Strait of Hormuz, okay? The only thing they give a fuck about is trade, international trade. Treats must flow. 1 billion treats. If I can't send a single labubu to a Midwestern family, I will explode. Okay? You shall see what they actually think and how they actually feel if Iran ends up closing the Strait of Hormuz. The labubus must be free.
They condemned the bombing of nuclear facilities in Iran, saying it violates international law.
Why would they care about Iran, though? What do you mean? Iran is a part of this axis that is outside of the sphere of American influence, okay? Alongside Russia. It's like saying, why would they care about Russia? Iran also has a 25-year energy partnership with China.
Going to go to Katrina Yu in Beijing. Russia obviously has very close links with Iran. So does China, of course. Talk to us about the kind of reaction there to what's been happening.
Well, China has released a brief statement, but it was unequivocal. It has strongly condemned these attacks by the U.S. on Iranian nuclear facilities. It says that this is a violation of international law, of the UN Charter, that it only worsens the situation in the Middle East. It's called on all parties to return to dialogue, to push for a ceasefire, particularly Israel. And China says it stands ready to work with the international community toward finding a peaceful solution. Now, Beijing is watching this situation very closely because it's anxious for two reasons. The first is that it's a relatively close partner of Iran. It's called it a comprehensive strategic partner. It is its largest trading partner. It purchases about 15% of all its imported oil from Iran at quite a bargain price. And through this, it's provided an economic lifeline to the regime. So it's not in China's interest for this regime to fall. It doesn't want to lose its influence over Iran or weaken its influence overall in the Middle East. Now, the second reason that Beijing is watching this closely is because it's concerned about its energy security, especially if Iran chooses to close the Strait of Hormuz. Now,
you're off base on this one. No chance China's going to condemn Iran if they close the Strait of Hormuz. They didn't condemn Yemen when they blockaded Israel. Yeah, Yemen allowed Chinese trade vessels to continue going through the Red Sea. They didn't actually close the Red Sea. It's not the same as the Strait of Hormuz. The Red Sea is ginormous. Also, the impact of closing the Strait of Hormuz is far, far, far more consequential than stopping commerce from going through the Red Sea. That definitely impacts trade. China did skip Israeli ports for that, yes. But the ones that didn't were allowed to pass through. And not only that, but also, once again, closing the Strait of Hormuz means energy crisis. It means massive inflation, skyrocketing oil prices. China does have a lot of yes, China has the new railway to Iran. China has a lot of interest in Iran. That's why I think they should be taking a more stringent, a more protective and defensive stance here with Iran. Because part of the reason, or the major part of the reason why America wants to fucking dismantle Iran is because they want to pack up the region and start fighting against China directly. I agree just saying they won't condemn Iran. I think the reason why I don't think Iran can close the Strait of Hormuz without Chinese or Russian help, if not both. They can close it, but it will be a fairly short operation by the American Navy. There's a reason why there's so many aircraft carriers in the region, and there's a reason why there's so many Navy vessels in the region. It's to protect the Strait of Hormuz. It's to ensure that oil vessels still continue flowing through easily, as 25% of all oil crossing through that 33-kilometer strait. Iran cannot consistently stop trade in and of. Iran cannot consistently stop the vessels from passing through without receiving tremendous military action in retaliation from America and all the other Western partners. This is why I say Chinese intervention is a necessity here, or at the very least, Russian intervention is a necessity here. Why I say this is because even Chinese presence in this process would offer more legitimacy to Iranian sovereignty and all Iranian military actions. It would cause America to recalculate how much aggression they can show towards Iran, because all of a sudden it turns into the same thing that happened with the Russian nationals sitting inside of nuclear facilities that are joint projects with Iran. Vladimir Putin came out and said, do not touch the nuclear facilities where there are Russian nationals working inside, Russian civilian nuclear scientists working inside said nuclear facilities. And Israel did not bomb those facilities because Israel and America are way more afraid of nuclear armed states. They can't go to conflict with nuclear armed states. They can only engage in proxy battles with nuclear armed states. That's why I said yesterday's actions that America engaged in would not have happened if China literally was like, no, we have our people there. If China had sent, like, I don't know, envoys to Iran, or even if it was like symbolic, they just sent a bunch of people, sent like a military. I mean, that is, of course, if Iran allowed that to happen too, there's that calculation as well. But if China was more actively involved in defending Iranian sovereignty, America would have to recalculate how much bombing they can actually do. Same with Israel, of course. By the way, my uncle messaged me and said, we shouldn't get in the war with the U.S. because they'll bomb our new infrastructure while American infrastructure is so shit, it's not even worth bombing. The spy ships could be helping. There's that. I read a report about Chinese satellites that Iran has been using, as a matter of fact, when they're bombing Israel as well. I forget what it was. There's like China has given some technology to Iran that Iran is using in their bombing campaigns. But I don't know if it's like, I don't know if that's, I don't know how I don't know how much they're helping. But my point is, it's not true. My point is they could be actively defending Iranian sovereignty. Also read that China might have given some laser tracking for air defenses. Is the U.S. demanding that China convince Iran? Yes. The U.S. is calling on China to prevent Iran from closing the Strait of Hormuz and disrupting global oil flows. This is how you know this is a real situation, by the way, because the United States would not have this conversation with respect to Russia's invasion of Ukraine or the continued annexation of Ukraine. But when it comes down to the actual moneymakers, because that is the nuclear option, all of a sudden they're like, actually, please pick up the phone call, Xi Jinping. Please don't let Iran do this. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio called on China to prevent Iran from blocking the Strait of Hormuz in retaliation for U.S. airstrikes. About 20% of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz. China is Iran's biggest oil customer and maintains friendly relations with the Islamic Republic. Satellite image of the Strait of Hormuz, a strategic maritime choke point with Iran situated at the top, with Qasem Island and the United Arab Emirates to the south. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Sunday called for China to prevent Iran from closing the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important trade routes. I encourage the Chinese government in Beijing to call them about that because they heavily depend on the Straits of Hormuz for their oil, which is also true. Rubio said in an interview on Fox News, China is Iran's most important oil customer and maintains friendly relations with the Islamic Republic. Iran's foreign minister warned earlier Sunday that the Islamic Republic reserves all options to defend its sovereignty after the U.S. bombed 3 key nuclear sites over the weekend. Iranian state-owned media, meanwhile, reported that Iran's parliament backed closing the Strait of Hormuz, citing a senior lawmaker. However, the final decision to close the strait lies with Iran's National Security Council, according to the report. An attempt to block the narrow waterway between Iran and Oman could have profound consequences for the global economy. Some 20 million barrels per day of crude oil, or 20% of global consumption, flowed through the strait in 2024, according to the Energy Information Administration. Oil prices could shoot above $100 per barrel if the strait is closed for a prolonged period, according to Goldman Sachs and consulting firm Rapidan Energy. Iran is the third largest oil producer in OPEC, pumping 3.3 million barrels per day. The Islamic Republic exports at least 1.6 million barrels per day, with nearly 80% sold to China. It would hurt other countries' economies a lot worse than ours, Rubio said. It would be, I think, a massive escalation that would merit a response, not by just us, but from others. Reading Chinese nationalist commentary about Israel-Iran war, there is a tremendous amount of invective towards Israel and the U.S., but concurrently a position that China should not become deeply involved in a conflict. The reasoning is twofold. While China purchases a significant minority of its oil from Iran, this does not rise to the... I read this already. I read this 3 days ago. We saw this already. I thought this was new. This is what we are... This is what we're waiting for at the moment. Like, what the Iranian response is going to look like. Okay? What the Iranian response is going to look like. Will they mine the Strait of Hormuz? Will they shut it up? Will they shut it down? Will they blow up? Will they blow up American installations, American bases in the region? So far, there hasn't been a lot of momentum. So far, they've just been striking at Israel.
Not only does its imports of Iranian oil pass through there, so does its imports of oil from Saudi Arabia, which is Beijing's second largest provider of imported oil. And it also buys gas from Qatar and from the UAE, which also...
Iran is less trustworthy than the Taliban government for the CN Gov, which is crazy enough. Shouldn't treat China like a whale. Wait, you read that analysis on Beidou satellite, so you should know how many times Iran has sold out China. It's in the same article. Yes, Iran, again, I mean, Iran did this with India as well and Pakistan as well.
Passes.
China is a whale, however, especially because Iran, whether look, I'm sure they have better calculations. They care about, China cares more about its own ambitions than I ever could. So I'm sure they're making a calculation. I don't know exactly which calculation this is, but judging by what they've done so far, which is simply to write sternly worded letters, it feels like they're not. It feels like they're just letting the Islamic Republic get crippled over and over again
through this strait. Now, despite these very grave concerns from Beijing, we're unlikely to see Beijing make any material participation in this conflict beyond strong statements, beyond being active in the United Nations. And this is because generally China approaches any international conflict very cautiously. It doesn't have any formal allegiances. It has partnerships, but not any security. Reluctant to enter any war without it being absolutely necessary for China to do so.
Katrina, thank you very much indeed. Katrina, you there in Beijing.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from... And we want to bring in now our Fox News senior strategic analyst.
Recent analysis from Arnaud could be hopium. JD Vance, Iran blocking Hormuz would be suicidal for its economy. Interesting coincidence. The Iran-China freight train line was inaugurated 3 weeks ago. And since 90% of Iranian oil exports go to China, the answer is no. Closing Hormuz is not suicidal for its economy. As the article says, with the rail line far away from American military presence, Iran can export oil and import goods from China with the ease of mind if the sea trade is disrupted. Yeah, they have ports beyond the Hormuz Strait as well, obviously, if they want to continue fucking selling oil, but that doesn't matter because like obviously nothing. This would be incredibly harmful for Iran as well, regardless. But it would be way more fucking significant for the rest of the world. I don't know about the railway being a steady flow of oil for China. He's undeterred. Mahmoud Khalil is protesting right outside the gates of Columbia University, and standing with him is none other than Manola de los Santos of the People's Forum.
You're supporting genocide! You're supporting genocide! Colombia, you want high!
Sick. They have to supply their economy outside of another somehow. This is what we're up against. I mean, yeah. I looked at this yesterday. It was crazy. Here,
we want to bring in.
Let's do a little bit of domestic propaganda, or specifically how they are selling the idea that we have to go to war with Iran because obviously there's you should be fearful of Iran. There's sleeper cells everywhere. Just as the same role as the anthrax campaign played, making every Tom, Dick, and Harry living in like the countryside be fearful of the ever-present threat of Islamic terrorism, Islamic style terror. Oh, also, before we do that, the new talking points have been downloaded, ladies and gentlemen. New talking points for MAGA have been downloaded. If you're no longer MAGA because Trump wiped out Iran's nuclear sites, you were never MAGA to begin with. If you're upset that Trump took out Obama's nuclear facilities in Iran, you were never MAGA. Which is so ironic. To invoke Obama in this case is so funny because he did successfully stop the Iranian nuclear program. Trump actually restarted it. Oh my God, I can't believe this. These guys are so fucking stupid that they have me defending Barack Hussein Obama. Oh my God. Urgent from Home Front Command. Due to detected rocket launches, sirens may be activated in the coming minutes in the following areas: Judean foothills, Judea, Guvashan, Bekaa, Samaria, Jerusalem, Sharon, Lachish, Dan, Yarkhan. If you're no longer MAGA because Trump wiped out Iran's nuclear sites, you were never MAGA in the first place. I may upset a lot of people with this, but if you're no longer MAGA, it's like, oh my God. They're fucking bots. You come here to get the news early, okay? You don't come here to get the news. You come here to get the news before the news gets to the news. U.S. officials concede they don't know whereabouts of Iran's uranium stockpile. You come here to get the news before it turns into the news. People are losing it after Trump bombed Iran's nuclear sites.
And somebody in the White House needs to take Trump and sit his ass the fuck down. Life already hard. Now we got to worry about this bullshit. Ever since you stepped foot in the motherfucking White House, you ain't did nothing but cause motherfucking chaos. I'm not getting out there and fighting no motherfucking body. I'm on Iran's side. I'm on their motherfucking side. Fuck the U.S. I don't give a damn.
I mean, true. It's like, give me healthcare and maybe I'll reconsider my loyalty to this fucking state and all of its endless violence. Except if the state is too predisposed with doing endless fucking violence, then they can't offer any healthcare. And if the state were to offer healthcare, then they wouldn't be doing unlimited violence anyway. Iran is launching missiles against Israel right now. Liberals are getting cooked on the timeline. Sorry to bring this up again, but y'all should have voted. Like, I'll never forgive y'all for saying it doesn't matter and Kamala was the same as him. You have to understand something. These people don't care, okay? They don't care. 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 They just want to fucking own the Republicans and feel smart. That's it. And when I do the exact opposite, when I tell you that the Kamala administration would be the same as the Trump administration, as they've signaled that they would be the same as the Trump administration over and over again, as the current Democratic Party is saying that, people think I'm doing that to hurt their feelings, or people think that I'm doing that because of some cynical purpose, because I'm like a secret agent or something, or I'm secretly MAGA or something. Saying that is because if you truly do care about not doing chaos and war over there, and instead focusing on fixing the potholes, fixing healthcare, fixing the housing crisis, then you have to understand that you have to demand that the Democrats also push that agenda. Okay? That's it. But people don't understand this. People think that I'm saying this to like make liberals feel bad or something. This is not about partisan politics because both parties are in line with this agenda. Final New York early voting tally, New York mayoral race, final early voting update. Brooklyn, 118% increase. Manhattan, 102% increase. Queens, 114% increase. Bronx, 50% increase. Staten Island, 36% increase. My prediction, without factoring in any of the early voting stuff, is a huge mistake to fully rely on it. Would probably be Cuomo single digits, but with the strong early vote, the sky is the possibility, really. This is a good assessment because isn't that bad? No. I don't think we won't know. We won't know until it happens, but you think Brooklyn, 118% increase in early voting is bad? Are you crazy? Brooklyn and Manhattan are experiencing insane extra turnout. Okay. Remember what I said about turnout in the general election? Turnout favored Donald Trump. Everybody thought, oh, young people are going out and voting. Like, this is good for the Democrats. On the day of the election, what did I tell you? There is a very high likelihood that this increased turnout actually does not favor the Democrats at all, but instead favors the Republicans because the normally inactive voters, the voters that don't actually go and vote, okay, low propensity voters were clearly overwhelmingly on the side of Trump. So therefore, that I said over and over again that there is a very high likelihood, if not a guarantee, that Trump is going to win the popular vote. Okay? Higher turnout, as a matter of fact, even from young people, was increasing the likelihood of Donald Trump's victory, not decreasing the likelihood of his victory. And that was true. In this instance, you have Cuomo, who is the establishment pick, who has locked down through name recognition, brand loyalty. The Cuomo dynasty is very important for all these fucking boomers. Cuomo has the same day voters, okay? The voters that are going to go out the day of, that are at the heart of the Democratic Party's machine. People that watch MSNBC, people that watch local news, people that are over the age of 50 who like Andrew Cuomo because they just kind of see him as the guy that they've always voted for. Okay? People that don't really think about who they're voting for or the policies and are probably a little bit more comfortable in their existence than the younger base of support. The early turnout increases, especially in areas that are most likely overwhelmingly pro-Zoran, like Brooklyn and Manhattan, is a good sign. The lowest amount of early voter turnout comes from more red boroughs, if you think about it. Staten Island being the most right-wing one out of all of these, okay? Areas where there hasn't been as much of a door-knocking operation, I suspect, for Zohran Mamdani. Areas where Zohran Mamdani has done tremendous efforts in door-knocking operations have seen tremendous increases in early voting turnout. Now, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what this is. I don't know what this means. But with the little amount of knowledge that I know, the little amount of knowledge that I have over all of this, this is not necessarily a fucking bad thing. Team Mamdani has let me share their internal numbers on Friday mosque canvassing. They covered 136 mosques in all 5 boroughs, 52 in Queens, 48 in Brooklyn, 17 in Bronx, Manhattan 14, Staten Island 5. 300 volunteers led the way for the largest Friday prayer canvass in American history. Wow.